Hello, everyone. It is me. I'm a nerd politics, and today I have some rather more special news when it comes to the presidential race. So the last video I made, it showed that after the debate, the polls for Harris were ever so barely slightly up for her in some battleground states, such as um, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Nevada. Now, even with that being, Trump still wins, but wins by a little bit less than 300 by 291. But the polls have drastically changed now as of battleground states by what Real Clear polling says. She leads by battleground states by 0.1% still, but that's probably going to change here in just a week or two. But the great news is that a very democratic, very left leaning, you know, uh, poll result people team, Teamsters, which for a long time has been very far left, saying that, yeah, based on whose favorability and who I want to favorite, who I want to endorse, the Democratic candidate ends up going by a long shot over, double digits in the 10 or 20% range. And then sometimes that's true, and a lot of times it isn't. But within recently, since Harris has been running, and after the most recent debate just happened, Trump has had endorsements of 58% compared to Harris's 21%. There is or a 31%, sorry, not 21, a 31. So a 27-point advantage with only 6 undecided and 5 unknown. Pretty big, like pretty large for the Republicans here. And I want to also speak on that in regards to the recent, in recently with the 60,000 that came to the rally here in New York. Will it change? Will it make battleground like effects for Donald Trump to win in New York? Probably not. I don't think that Harris will win in double digit. Sorry. I don't think Donald Trump will win by double digit. Or sorry, I don't think Harris will win by double digits in New York. She doesn't have a background or a following that's known like Biden, who has had the 4 years here in the office and hasn't done anything responsible or right. Um, and that that still doesn't mean that everyone just loses interest. People have a following for Biden, unlike Harris, who doesn't have a background, doesn't have a concept of what her policy is. He doesn't have a plan. Trump has said he has a concept. He needs to work on a plan. It's kind of the difference here. Um, but I'm going to first label out the safe states, being most of the West here, the most part of Nebraska, the first district of Maine here, and get through here, including Iowa and Ohio. Ohio is Vance's, state here, and Iowa we saw in the primaries recently. It's obvious, for those reasons. A 149 here, and Kamala's safe states include, California, Washington, Oregon, as well as I'd say majority, including the main part, the most main part of Maine, and most of these very more eastern, states here. The original colonies, you may call it, as well as Hawaii. So we have a 140, 149 here. Let's get into likely Republican states. Over time, it has been proven that Texas has gone down in terms of Republican voters, but it is still in double digits for Republicans. So I think it's going to be a more guaranteed state. So is Florida. We obviously saw it in 2016 that Florida was real close to being as a battleground state of Democrat or Republican, because obviously in 2012 and 2008, Obama won by double digits or near double digits in Florida. And even in the year 2000, we saw that Florida was barely won by Republicans by just by probably around 1,000 voters. So it was always a battleground state since the beginning of the 2000s, but has gradually become more overpopulated with Republican voters, and been endorsed by Republican leaders. And I think it proves very much that Florida has this endorsement likely to vote for Trump. Um, and also North Carolina as well. I would say those are his likely states. Uh, Harris's likely states include Colorado, my home state, um, the second district of Nebraska here, New York, and I'm trying to see, and probably Illinois as well. And then going back to Trump, let's look at or actually, you know what? I'm going to put this as a likely. I think New Mexico is still going to vote for Harris no matter what. So putting that there. So now we're looking at battleground states, that being Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Virginia, which has been iffy on being a battleground state, Georgia, Arizona, and Nevada. So let's talk about the importances here, by what this has to say as of recently. It's September 19th, but goes back to the 18th. In Arizona, we see a 1.6 advantage for Donald Trump. I still think it's likely going to be higher than that when it comes to November. People switch who they're voting for and be more dedicated to the one person they stay with, right? So there's going to be more switches when the election comes up here in a few couple days, about a month and a half. And then also, let's see here, Nevada says a 0.2% advantage. I'm willing to believe those numbers have changed, uh, obviously since the group I just talked about in the video the team group. I'm acting like Biden right now. I can't seem to remember what I just said, but yeah, you know me. Yeah, the Teamsters. I was gonna say Webster, but that's the director of the FBI at one point. So oops. But Teamster obviously has shown that the endorsement rate for Donald Trump is so high that I don't think a lot of these polls are that accurate. Not as if they need to be accurate. Polls could be far off. It really just is dependent on who's voting for who, not on, well, this is the stats I pulled because I felt like it, by whoever the news companies are that do that. But I think Trump is likely in the same, or leans the same way Arizona is towards Nevada in the true realm and aspect of the whole thing. Wisconsin is a 1.2 advantage, so I'm gonna go off of that for now, being a very ever so slight lead, if I can get it right there. But I don't think it's gonna stay that way. I think it is gonna switch. Moreover, Michigan is a 1.7 advantage. I'm willingly to believe that Harris did a recent interview with African American. I think it was like an African American thing. The same way Trump did something along the same lines, and I don't remember the whole thing, so I'm not going to talk super briefly into it. But from what I know is that she just repeated the same words like "this is what I'm going to do" and "la la 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 la," just no, just not having a real plan. And for those reasons, I think Trump has to have a battleground kind of state here down in Michigan. Pennsylvania here is a 1 point advantage. I don't think it is. I think, if anything, same with Michigan, it's going to be a heavily battleground state. Now, of course, that puts them at 286. So he automatically wins, but there are still 3 states left to go here. We have Georgia with a 1.7 lead. I think it's likely the same way Arizona and Nevada are to vote Republican here again, because state hasn't been Democratic since 2020, and even before that since 1976. So we had a near 50-year gap. And in North Carolina by 0.1%, I think that number is going to increase a lot more than that. But that's just what these are saying. So now we have to talk about Virginia and Minnesota, which, Virginia, when Biden was running, I've talked about in many videos, and I'm not the only one to speak about it. Virginia was going in a very more positive direction for Republicans, but is it going to stay consistent to that path? Right now, I'd say Harris leads with a 1 to 2 point lead in Virginia. But let's think of this coming up the near end of October, the near start of November, when elections are happening. I mean, we're already looking at polls already opening for voters right now, and that might have some effect, definitely more here in the East Coast, but as well as the far west over here as well. And the South is going to be infected too, because a lot of the South is very Republican, other than, Delaware and Maryland and, Virginia and DC, of course. And so I think right now Trump might have a battleground state here where, if anything, the only way he wins Virginia is if he campaigns more in the state, or it just so happens to flip because more people get more interested in voting for Trump just by the anxious anxiety of like thinking, oh yeah, he'll fix the country. Yep, got it. And Minnesota, I've liked to say for a long time that, Tim Walz obviously destroyed his governing state. Most of the people don't even like him as a governor, but your vice president doesn't really impact necessarily you winning the state. Of course, back in 2016, Clinton barely won Minnesota with, I think a 4,000 a people advantage, not by very much comparatively to past years. In fact, the last time the state was a Republican state was in 1972, not even a state that Ronald Reagan could get a hand of. I still think that this state is destined to change at any point, but for the reasons as of right now, I'm going to put it as a battleground state here for Kamala Harris. So that puts us at a 315 and 223. So of course, I would like to hear your comments and responses in the description, in the comments down below. You can also watch my other channels in the description down below. And of course, until then, I will see you all in the next political video. Peace out, everyone.